Now that we're all caffeinated, we can head into our final panel on national and regional destinations. To moderate, we have Jonathan Tourtellot, a consultant, journalist, and editor who specializes in sustainable tourism and destination stewardship. Jonathan and I go way back. We were editors together during the golden days of print, when travel magazines were fat and full of ads, and before we journalists had to reinvent ourselves for a new age. But even back then, Jonathan was concerned about the health of places. He was the originator of the concept geotourism, and he founded National Geographic's Center for Sustainable Destinations, which he ran for 9 years, and which continues to this day as the Independent Destination Stewardship Center. Please welcome my friend, Jonathan Tourtellot. Is he coming out? Okay.
Here we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Nora. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see most of you back from the most important session of the day, which is the coffee break, and wish we could have joined you there. We've got two very different types of destinations to talk about in this session. Lake Tahoe region and Iceland. They do have one thing in common, which is for both of them, nature is a major attraction. And I think we've got some slides to get queued up here for we're ready. Slides. While we're waiting for that, I'll point out that Iceland is an entire country. It has a national government, and that makes things a little easier, whereas the Lake Tahoe region, by contrast, has 6 counties, 2 states, and 1 city. And this makes destination management and policy a little more interesting in that area. Lake Tahoe, as you can see, is, of course, beautiful. And one thing that's significant about it is that this is one of the destinations that has basically been a resort for at least 100 years, and I imagine longer than that. So being a resort destination is literally part of the heritage there. And you can enjoy a day. Oh, where's my clicker? Do we have a clicker? On the table, yeah. So you can enjoy a stay in nature, and that can be very peaceful, but this is also Lake Tahoe. And these cars are representative of one of the common problems in any resort destination that's close to a major metropolitan area. So we have a lot of people from the Bay Area and San Francisco trading traffic jams in the Bay Area for a traffic jam in Lake Tahoe. And we are finding this, of course, in many other places as well, national parks, and sometimes in places you would not imagine, like national parks in Chile are having some of this same problem. Iceland, hello, Iceland? There we go. In 2010, there were 2 explosions in Iceland. One of them was the eruption of the volcano Eyjafjallajökull, or something like that. That was over in a few weeks. The other explosion was tourism growth, and that explosion has continued right up until today, going bigger and bigger and bigger, faster than any tourism growth, I think, anywhere else in Europe. And this kind of caught the Icelanders by surprise, and they've been trying to catch up ever since. Now, I love Iceland. I've been going there on and off most of my life. And I did go back this summer, my first time back since 2010, and I was a little worried about what I would find, and I'm pleased to report that the Icelandic landscapes are still gorgeous. It is magical scenery. The culture is better explained now than it used to be, I think, as a result of some of this tourism growth. But there are certainly impacts, and we'll be learning a little bit more about those. Now, some of us go to Iceland, like the people we're seeing here as a tour group, learning about the cultural heritage of the country at Thingvellir, which is a major assembly place. And others of us go to Iceland to do this. And I don't want to become a selfie Grinch here, and these people are obviously having fun. But I think there's an indication that some of the over-tourism problem, I've certainly seen it, are selfie-driven visitors whose main purpose is to get there, take the selfie, and move right on again. And that adds to tourism traffic. And what hides behind this, and something to think about because we know the tourism demand is only going to get higher and higher, is that destinations now have a chance to pick and choose a little bit who they want to market to. And if weekenders are causing a problem, maybe fewer weekenders. If selfie takers are causing a problem, maybe emphasize something else. That's going to be difficult for Iceland because it's going to be difficult for both of you because it's very scenic destinations, both of them. So I'll leave that thought, and we'll turn it over to our first speaker, which is Julie Regan, who helps with the one agency that does cover all those different jurisdictions at Lake Tahoe. That's the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And then following her, we'll have María Reynisdóttir, who works on tourism management for that national government of Iceland. So at least both of you have the whole destination at heart. Julie?
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. It is such an honor to be here with so many esteemed members of the tourism sector community. Again, I'm Julie Regan, and I'm from Lake Tahoe with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And I do know that our panel is really one of the last things standing in your way between the wine reception. So we will do our best to be very pithy and to move this right along because it's been a long day, but it's been a fascinating day. And I think the topic sometimes almost feels overwhelming for some of us who are working in the trenches every day. And what I'm encouraged by is the amount of brain power that's in this room. So all of us are working together collectively to make our communities better because we love our special places wherever they may be. And I really think that's, at the end of the day, something that we can take away as a positive from this, that there are good people working on solutions. And I look forward to continuing this dialogue. I do want to give a quick shout out to my colleague, Darcy Collins. Dr. Collins is in the back taking a picture. Hi, Darcy. And she is the executive director of the League to Save Lake Tahoe, a major nonprofit organization and a co-sponsor with our organization here today of the forum. Darcy has to catch a plane, so I appreciate her being here. And before I get going on the slides, I just wanted to go back to wine to say that before we could even get this concept together for what we would talk about, we reached out to our colleagues in the visitor sector, the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority, the local chambers of commerce, and I had to take my dear friend Carol Chaplin, the executive director of the Visitors Authority, for wine because she said, Julie, I don't even like that word over tourism. I don't even know if I want to play in this space. And I do think it's important that we acknowledge that right out of the chute in this conversation because, as you've heard from so many other speakers, it's metrics driven. We want more heads in beds. We want more exposure for our destinations. Saying that our destinations are crowded sometimes can create negative publicity, which our tourism officials are loath to have happen. So the conversation with that private sector is so important. And after a little wine, we got everybody on board, and they were so happy to be a part of this and to sponsor it. But I do think it's important to acknowledge the terminology is important, and in our preparation, I heard from María that they like to call it pressure points in Iceland. And I think that is very aptly described because we both are coming from two large areas, and the entire watershed of Lake Tahoe is not overcrowded, but they certainly, it can be, and there are pressure points in many of the most beautiful parts of Lake Tahoe. So first, just a quick primer of where we are in the world. We're straddling the states of California and Nevada. We're a bi-state watershed-based governance model, really the only watershed-based governance in the country in the way that we manage development and land use as part of this responsibility that we have that's an interstate compact between California and Nevada sanctioned by Congress. So we have a unique governance, which is actually part of our story and how we've been able to maintain this beautiful resource for 100 years of people visiting. But we also have a lot of new pressures. And so if you look at the California arrow going across there, we're only about 4 hours from the San Francisco Bay Area, and then that whole area is growing rapidly, as well as northern Nevada up to Reno. And so an author visited Tahoe this year, Tony Hiss, and he equated us to like Central Park, as to New York City, as we are to the regional area between the Bay Area of San Francisco and northern Nevada, which is growing into one big megapolis. So we are the backyard of about 15 million people. So we have a lot of drive-up visitors who want to enjoy getting out of their urban environments into Lake Tahoe, but sometimes they sit in traffic, as we've all been discussing today. So we have this perfect storm that I think is something that we all share. We haven't gotten a lot into the demographics of travel. We've talked about the baby boomers certainly being, 70 million people. But now we also have the bucket list baby boomer traveler who wants to travel the world and check off things from their bucket list. We have that combined with the adventure seeker millennial, which is an even bigger demographic of 80+ million people, the largest living generation today. And they are traveling, and the travel spend is up. We're all feeling that, I think, that perfect storm of demographic shifts in people who want to travel, relatively affordable airfare at reasonable prices. We also have the advent of the social media platforms. So we have TripAdvisor, Airbnb, all the things that make it very easy to travel. So all of these forces combined are creating a real perfect storm, I think, in a lot of our destinations around the world, plus the good economy as well. So just a bit about what's going on in the economic side of our area. We actually had a crash before the recession, and we had a mass exodus of our local residents. It's important to note we only have about 60,000 year-round residents, so we're really like a rural mountain community up high in elevation with beautiful snow and beautiful summers. We have year-round recreation. But then around us, 15 million people. But back in the 50s and 60s, what really led to the creation of this uniquely protected area was the fact that they were looking for a city to be developed as large as San Francisco. So instead of a full-time population of about 60,000, the vision was for a population of 750,000. And that really spurned a lot of opposition to say, actually, let's put the brakes on that. We need a better thought-out plan for smart growth for the future. And so we have been able to protect what could have been a major metropolitan developed area. But we went down in the recession at the far left of the graph. We started coming back up after the recession, after we actually had to do some serious soul searching in our community. Casinos were the main economic driver of tourism for many decades at the lake, but now almost anyone can gamble anywhere they want to throughout the United States. So we have to transform ourselves into really celebrating our natural assets, the outdoor recreation economy. So that is what we've been doing, and we have been steadily climbing in the transient occupancy tax, basically the hotel tax, and that's just one proxy for a lot of other activity, but we're seeing a real renaissance occur in Lake Tahoe. Some of the pictures that Jonathan had on the slide, you look at the old buildings, and I think it might have been you who said Tahoe sometimes could be like a museum of bad 1970s architecture if you drive up and down one of our main highways, because we have growth management and we have controls on development. One of the unintended consequences of that strategy has been a lack of investment in property. So we have a plan that we're working on now. And we are seeing a real renaissance of investment. We have $600 million of private investment around the lake just in the last 5 or 6 years. So with the economy picking back up, people are investing in what we call environmental redevelopment of our community. With the increase of activity comes a bit of, an impact that we have to look at. So this information graphic from the League to Save Lake Tahoe puts it in perspective with the power of images. We now have almost 10 million cars driving into the Tahoe Basin on an annual basis. And at one time we thought our visitor count was maybe about 5 million people. So we invested in cell phone technology to actually ping the devices of people that as they come into the area. There's only 7 roads into the basin. It is like a true basin, like a bowl with the lake being at the bottom. And we know that we have a lot more day trip traffic. 40-some% of the people coming in are just here for the day, so they're not paying hotel tax, most likely not sales tax, but there are impacts associated with that. And other impacts from invasive species, the threat of wildfire, trash. This is the challenge that I wanted to show in this slide, that we have people who come for the solitude experience, mountain biking, skiing, being out in what is desolation wilderness in the National Forest Service lands, which has a huge presence in Tahoe. But then we also have people who come to gamble, to go to concerts. Every weekend in the summer we have concerts where we have 7,000 or 8,000 people that are attending great performances. So we have to balance all that and try to harmonize. But our motto in Tahoe has always been, at least in the last 20 years in this collaborative spirit, the economy is the environment, and the environment is the economy. So how do we move into solutions? Environmental regulations and growth management is just one piece of the pie, and it's important. And I think I heard a common thread from everyone that enforcement and the environmental and regulatory framework is key. And so I think we have that covered. But a couple of the others I wanted to touch on: public-private partnerships. We can't do it without our private sector partners as a government agency, and vice versa. We actually call what we do epic collaboration. It was a coin, Sally Jewell, the former Secretary of Interior, coined that. We do collaboration on steroids at Lake Tahoe because we have so many different jurisdictions, federal agencies, state, private sector. So we feel like that is a winning recipe for us. And citizen engagement and stewardship is very key. So I wanted just to share in the last couple minutes here the take care message that we've determined is essential in getting our local citizens and our local tourists engaged in the solution, so that after July 4th on the beach, this picture of the trash at the bottom does not become the norm. In the top, those are broken sleds, the little sleds that you buy at the grocery store. People will sled and they'll leave their trash just there. So we developed this message, take care, which we think will cut through the clutter. It's still a fairly recent campaign, and we've identified various messages about bears and litter and fire and aquatic invasive species, about people moving invasive species when they boat on the lake. And we've had a little fun with this campaign, and I just wanted to show you a clip. And I think if I say roll the clip, it will potentially work.
Please don't let your snack wrappers fly into the air. Lock up your trash to protect it from bears. Don't let your cigarette cause a big flare. Everyone take care.
Hello.
Everyone take care. Everyone take care.
And so we have drilled down for each of these issues. Each of those various issues have their own spots. And this is one of our famous ones. If it's your dog, it's your duty.
Here's a message that we think everybody should share. Your dog's poop doesn't disappear in thin air. So if he goes in public, please remove it from there. Everyone take care. Everyone take care.
That's pretty fun, huh? So we're hoping that this campaign will really, in a humorous way, bring people together to be part of the solution. Because let's face it, when we go on vacation, we call it, vacation brain. We just really are not focused on environmental stewardship. So we're using this campaign as a way to improve that. We have our challenges with vacation home rentals too. I'm hopeful that we can get into the conversation in the Q&A about that. Lake Tahoe's been on the national news about dealing with some of those issues of neighborhood compatibility and the new technology and the conflict. It's very polarizing in our community. We are not immune and have loved hearing about those various solutions from other folks here. A couple quick things to mention before I close. The shoulder season strategy for us is a huge shift that we are making in not marketing necessarily just to our peak summer visitorship or our winter ski and snowboarding activities, but really trying to get people to come in the fall, in the spring. It can be very challenging to do that, but coupled with that, we're also cultivating new markets, new air service, and so the tourism community is very aware of this issue that we have to spread out the attractions, we have to spread out the demand, because we are not in a position to build more roads. We're not doing that. We're a mountain community that's constrained from a physical envelope. So we have to be more creative in our solutions. And then new conventions also, we are looking to build a new convention center, which would hopefully bring groups in during the non-peak times. One piece that looks familiar with what you all have seen, the pressure point problem in the lower right, in order to get to the upper left corner of the Solitude, but if you have to fight in this traffic jam where people are literally all over the road, just like in Acadia, it's just not going to protect that quality experience over time. So we're looking at some new innovative shuttles, and one video I wanted to wrap up with.
You're at Lake Tahoe to enjoy it. You can avoid parking and traffic hassles and protect the lake. Roads have become a leading source of pollution that harms Lake Tahoe's clarity. The League to Save Lake Tahoe has launched a microtransit pilot program. The shuttles, run by Chariot, serve South Tahoe's most congested visitor area. Data from the pilot will help improve transportation planning at Tahoe. Download the app, find your route, and give it a try. Then tell us about your experience.
Essentially, that Chariot is a micro-transit shuttle system. It's like Uber in a minivan, and you can call that up on an app on your phone, and we just pilot tested that this summer at one of the various busiest times, one of the most busy times of the summer after July 4th, and we're seeing great promise, and the data that we're collecting, back to Jamaica's data-driven approach, I think will really help us manage the travel demand in the future from the millennial generation who really will be looking for technology to be involved in their travel destination choices. So I'm very grateful for the time to be here today. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Jordan. I think that dog in the video must have eaten at Taco Bell. Maria, take us to Iceland.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First, let me say what an honor it is to be here. I will now present some of the challenges Iceland has faced and solutions the Icelandic government has been working on in connection with the recent tourism boom. Iceland received a record 2.2 million foreign tourists last year. That's 5 times the amount of tourists in 2010, when there were less than 500,000. What caused this sudden increase? It was the eruption of the volcano with the jaw-breaking name that Jonathan managed to pronounce so well, Eyjafjallajökull. It put Iceland on the map and boosted its image as a country of natural wonders. There were, of course, other factors: increased flights, a free stopover option, and the depreciation of the Icelandic currency after the financial crisis in 2008 that made it cheaper to vacation in Iceland. In 2010, the government and industry also launched a marketing campaign inspired by Iceland. The tourism boom helped pull Iceland out of a deep recession. It reduced unemployment and diversified the previously mainly fisheries-based economy. Tourism has also improved Icelanders' quality of life. We can now choose from a wider range of services and flight destinations than before. But doesn't this mean that Iceland is overrun with tourists? Well, to put things into perspective, let's move Iceland into the Mediterranean and compare it with another island nation, Malta. While both countries receive a similar number of tourists per year and have a similar sized population, Iceland 350,000, Malta 450,000, Malta is 326 times smaller, the size of one lava field in Iceland. This is, of course, just a simple spatial comparison of two very different destinations, but enough to tell me that the situation is manageable. So the answer is no, Iceland is not overrun with tourists as a whole. However, certain factors, the small population, the small economy, the fragile nature, do make Iceland vulnerable to sudden tourism pressures. These materialize in certain ways, in certain places, at certain times. Research shows that pressure points are primarily in southern Iceland, where the main airport and cruise ship ports are located. In the capital, Reykjavik, there's growing dissatisfaction with tourist numbers in summer among both tourists and residents. Residents complain about bus traffic, the rise in home sharing, mainly through Airbnb, and too many souvenir or puffin stores, as they are sometimes called. At several popular sites in the south, such as the Golden Circle, that includes a hot spring, a waterfall, and a national park, tourist footfall is causing damage to nature. Infrastructure, such as roads, toilets, and paths, is stretched. A growing number of tourists and residents claim there are too many other tourists in summer. Resident concerns include littering, price increases, grocery shortages, and dangerous road traffic. Fewer tourists make it further east, north, and west, especially in winter, but pressure points exist here as well. For example, at Lake Mývatn, where research reveals environmental damage and a high proportion of residents claim there are too many tourists in summer. Their main concerns being bus traffic, sewer problems, and a lack of infrastructure such as parking. In the West Fjords, the least visited region, there are signs that cruise ship arrivals in the small town of Ísafjörður in summer are affecting tourist and resident attitudes negatively due to traffic and pollution. The picture is, of course, more nuanced. Other areas show a very positive picture, with residents thinking tourists are too few in winter. Surveys show that Icelanders are generally positive towards tourism, and 90% of tourists claim that their trip met their expectations. Where there is frustration, it seems to be linked to a sense of a lack of management. So how has the government tackled these issues? There's no magic solution, but I will name 4 things that have helped Iceland manage the tourism boom. First, regulation. Recent legislation limits home sharing to 90 days per year and a defined income cap. The city of Reykjavik has put a cap on hotel developments in the city center and has created designated tourist bus stops in consultation with the Residents Association to reduce traffic in residential streets. Like this one I can see from my office window. Coordination. Tourism is a fragmented industry. Involving relevant stakeholders is essential. In 2015, the government and industry published a roadmap for tourism. Over 1,000 people at 50 meetings around the country helped shape this 5-year action plan that focuses on core issues such as data collection and nature conservation. A temporary tourism task force was formed to implement the actions. There are 4 ministers on the board, the ministers of tourism, environment, transport, and finance, together with representatives from the industry and local authorities. This approach has worked well, with most of the actions completed in 3 years. Infrastructure. More visitors year-round, like here at Þingvellir National Park, calls for more capacity. Our Tourist Site Protection Fund has funded 750 infrastructure projects since its creation in 2011. For example, this path at Goðafoss waterfall. The aim is to protect nature and improve safety at sites on private and municipal land, and to develop new sites to help spread tourism flows. This fund functions alongside a new long-term national infrastructure plan for the protection and development of larger state-owned and municipal sites. Communication. Iceland's marketing message has evolved from being a safe destination right after that volcanic eruption to all seasons and all regions, to the latest focus, responsible travel behavior. Involving the community and industry and using humor helps get the message across. The Icelandic Pledge is an awareness campaign featuring 8 statements that visitors can pledge to follow. One is in response to people taking risky selfies and goes, "I will take photos to die for without dying for them." Iceland Academy is another campaign comprised of mini tutorials on how to enjoy your trip while staying safe and behaving responsibly. I'll let this video talk for itself.
My name is Stina. Welcome to Iceland Academy. There are so many amazing things about Iceland. Beautiful nature, wonderful food, art, culture, and we know that you want to experience it all like a local. Our expert guides will teach you vital things such as how to pack for Iceland, how to have an Icelandic adventure, staying safe, Icelandic spa etiquette. So no matter where you travel, you'll always be happy and relaxed, just like us.
So, what's the situation now? We are still playing catch up and working on finding the appropriate management solutions, but I believe we are on the right track. The tourism growth rate is also slowing down. The main reason being the appreciation of our currency, ironically because of the tourism boom, making Iceland very expensive. While most agree the growth slowdown is a good thing, a worrying development is that tourists are shortening their stays to save money, which means proportionately more pressure on those attractions in the south. Looking ahead, tourism is likely to continue to grow. Although expensive, Iceland has a strong image. There will continue to be challenges, but also opportunities. It makes sense to continue with what has worked until now, and then some. Regulation needs to be constantly reviewed as business models evolve. The cruise sector is also an area that needs some looking into. We need more coordination at the regional level, such as through destination management plans that are being devised, and within nature conservation, but the government has plans to establish a national park service. We need to continue improving infrastructure whilst being aware that more isn't always better. Tourism needs to be taken into account in land use planning, and measures must be considered for crowd control at popular sites based on carrying capacity assessments. The communication needs to continue evolving with more targeted marketing and in-destination information that grabs the attention of a more diverse visitor mix. Examples of other important projects in progress are the formulation of sustainability indicators and subsequently a new official tourism strategy to take effect in 2020. That's all from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, María. Fire off a couple of questions here, and then we'll open it to the audience and our remote viewers. Beginning with Julie, I actually watched the CBS Morning News bit on what was happening in South Lake Tahoe, and this involved the application of horrendous fines for parking and such. Sorry.
Thanks for the help.
No wonder you couldn't hear me. Probably heard the taco I ate. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. We'll try again here. I was saying that I saw the CBS Morning News report on the new regulations in South Lake Tahoe, one of which was a huge fine if you were in the hot tub. This was directed basically at short-term rentals, and it being a resort area, there's a lot of short-term rentals. and you couldn't be in the hot tub after 10 p.m. And Gail King, who evidently has some experience in this regard, said, but everybody knows the most fun in a hot tub occurs after 10 p.m. But this raises a more difficult question, which is if you are a resort community, people are going to come to party because they're on vacation and they want to party. And we've also got an Airbnb dynamic going here, not just Airbnb, but any home share program. And on top of that, a phenomenon in a lot of these resort communities where you have second, third, and even fourth homes that stand empty much of the year. How are you juggling all of this?
No, thank you. It's an excellent question. And I think that news clip, it just underscored what really is a tension in our community right now. We've always had actually more second homes in the Tahoe Basin than we've had full-time residents because of the Bay Area connection. So most people were part-time residents, maybe coming up a couple weekends a year, maybe coming up every weekend. And those homes were being rented, but really what changed was the online ability for people to rent so easily through these various platforms. And people bringing bachelor parties into neighborhoods on buses to party. When maybe the house next door has small kids that have to get up for school, and if people are partying in the hot tub, it's just not compatible. So this has really bubbled up in communities across the country. I grew up originally from Delaware, very close here, 2 hours away. Rehoboth Beach, Delaware tried to ban pools. They wanted to allow no more permits for pools because the pool parties were disrupting neighborhoods. So Tahoe is not alone, and I think the ordinance that was passed was about parking and noise. They've since revised that ordinance to lower the amount because it did generate a great outcry. But it underscores really the underlying issues that we have to solve about how you balance being a tourist destination and also have a full-time community where you have people who have families that are having to get up in the morning. And so what we've tried to do is look at more enforcement strategies at the local government level. As you mentioned, we have various diverse jurisdictions around the lake, and it's more of a problem some places in the lake than others. So there's really no one-size-fits-all. But having an enforcement strategy around noise is part of it, and parking and trash management so that we don't have bears feeding on trash that are left behind in vacation rentals. And there's actually a ballot initiative on our local City of South Lake Tahoe's ballot this November. Because our local city council could not come to agreement on an appropriate restrictive ordinance that met all the needs, the community just said, you know what, we want to ban them all. So we'll see what happens in November if the community votes to just ban short-term rentals altogether. There'd be a number of years to phase them out, but it's a very hot issue in our community right now.
Yeah. Maria, we talked about the short-term rental issue in Reykjavik, which was both a plus and a minus, depending on which way you look at it. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, the plus side being that Iceland wouldn't have been able to receive the amount of tourists it has received in the last few years, except for Airbnb, taking up some of the slack. Hotel developments, they take time. So yes, in that way, we were able to reap the economic and social benefits from the tourism boom. But yes, there have also been challenges with the sudden increase in these home sharing rentals in residential areas, housing prices going up, and long-term renters being displaced, and noise and the rattling from suitcases, in the middle of the night, those kinds of things in the city center area, a pretty contained area. But yeah, so 2017 we put into force national legislation that I mentioned, the 90-day limit, to distinguish better between those who are individuals sharing their home for a limited amount of time and those who are renting it out for a longer period of time as a business, tourism business. And recently boosted enforcement. The district commissioner who registers the renters, yes, they were able to recruit more staff, And it seems to be having a positive effect. And registrations have increased, and the supply of apartments on Airbnb seems to be, decreasing.
So we're hearing a similar story to what we heard in Charleston earlier this morning. Let's open it up for questions from the audience and from afar. And I see one right there.
Hi, I'm Kendra Brickley. I'm with the Conservation Fund and the National Summit for Gateway Communities. And I had a question thinking about the infrastructure, particularly transportation infrastructure and its role in over-tourism. Have done some work with Zion. We're working with them now on trying to think about transit solutions for the eastern side of the park. And so I just wondered, I haven't heard this talked about today, so just wanted to ask you all, what kinds of approaches are you thinking about? You mentioned the chariot, but other ways of thinking about the transportation solutions related to your work.
Sure. I'll jump in first, and Maria can tag on. Transportation is one of our top priorities right now for dealing with this issue, and it's tough. Transportation funding is going down, not up. It's really hard to get funding for transit, for buses, and then it's hard to get people to ride the bus. So even if we had all the money in the world to have a bus that moved around every 10 minutes, we still couldn't get people to leave their cars. I think there was a stat in California, like 1 in 10 Californians love their cars more than their spouse. So people just love their vehicles. And if you bring your family with all your gear, it's hard to get around unless you're in your vehicle. So we have actually a bi-state task force that's working on it. Both Governor Brown and Governor Sandoval have commissioned their cabinet secretaries in their last year and a half of office, they're leaving office at the end of this year, to sit down and make some tough decisions about transportation and come up with some innovative solutions. The Chariot microtransit was just one project that came out. We're really looking also at the travel, it's called demand management, and that is where I think we have an opportunity with those pressure points to give people real-time information in a way that we're not set up to do yet, with apps, with data, with more boards that say, oh, Emerald Bay has a 3-hour delay, go around the other way. And we're just not there yet, but we're working on it. And also what we did this year, the last 2 years, is trying the bike share, which you see all around the city here. The Lime bikes, there's various companies. We used Lime bikes and scooters and bikes. And this year alone, we took 200,000 vehicle miles off the road of cars. So we got 200,000 vehicle miles traveled on bikes and scooters. Now the scooters are kind of crazy. People are riding them like with no helmets and going fast, but that being said, it really has filled a niche, not just for tourists, but also for our service employees who need to get to a casino or to a resort to work. And because it gets congested, these scooters and bikes are actually really helping the worker commute in addition to our visitor, which all makes up congestion. So those are just a couple examples, but we actually are mapping out a strategic plan around it as we speak.
Maria, anything on that? You've got some transportation issues in the interior, don't you, as well?
Transport is a big issue, yes. And it's been our main aim for a number of years now to distribute tourists out to the regions. But talking about the perfect storm, we had the financial crash in 2008, and then this tourism boom, sort of 2010. But due to the financial crash, we needed to make budget cuts to transport, amongst other things. So tourism boom and budget cuts to transport is not a favorable mix. But thanks to tourism, in the last few years, we are now at the height of an economic boom in Iceland. So now the government is able to boost the transport budget, and we'll be putting more money into developing roads and also servicing roads to lesser visited regions in winter. We see a big increase in tourists renting cars, so driving themselves. Many are not used to driving on icy roads. So hopefully we will see some progress there. Another thing the government has done is establish a route development fund to encourage direct flights into the east and north of the country. Today, almost all tourists arrive through one airport in the southwest corner, which, as I explained, causes this pressure in the south. The fund is off to a slow start. These things take time. We have had some direct flights into the north of Iceland, which will continue this winter, and have really boosted bed nights there. So hopefully that will continue, but like I said, it takes time.
Yeah.
The Highlands is another issue. They're only accessible in summer, and you have this debate. Should we, keep the gravel roads, or make them smoother so more people can travel there? It's a continuous debate.
As a tourist, I vote for the gravel roads.
Yeah.
That's
Jonathan, may I add one more thing I should have mentioned is a trail network. So thank you for pointing that out, Maria. For us, building a trail network is essential, and they are paved. So the irony is we are literally paving paradise, but it is helping the water quality because the erosion that results from unpaved roads is a real damage to the clarity of our lake. So we have a master plan to ring the lake for folks to be able to circumnavigate the lake with a paved trail that could be multi-use, pedestrian or bike, and that is very expensive. It can be anywhere from $1 million to $5 million per mile, and so we've got hundreds of miles of trail to build. So that is another big part of our strategy, because we actually have data that shows if people have another option other than their car that's easy, convenient, it's fast, it's free, they will do it to avoid congestion. So the trail network is a big part of our infrastructure plan.
okay. Do we have time for a couple more? I know we're running a little late due to excessive coffee drinking, but we got another question, one way in the back there. Yep. This is from outside.
Yes, one of our online attendees would like to ask Julie, with so many second homes in Tahoe, are there any issues with affordable housing for residents?
Yes, absolutely. I think affordable housing has hit a crisis point throughout the country, throughout the world, particularly in California, and we are not immune. And where other cities actually have a little bit of a leg up, places like San Francisco that are ridiculously expensive, they actually have a higher living wage job base. In Tahoe, we're a service-based tourism economy. Our tourism economy is like $5 billion, and the lion's share of that is service jobs, and they are not high-paying jobs. So we've got the pressure of the real estate prices going up, short-term rentals, we have an inventory problem for long-term rentals, and then you have a lack of living wage jobs. So that is a real problem that we're looking at. So we've got two housing councils that are working on solutions right now. There's some pilot projects that are under development. We have local governments. Our county is actually buying property because the land cost is so high. It throws the whole pro forma out for even making an affordable housing pencil out from the private sector standpoint. So without some kind of public support, these projects just won't happen. So we're looking at that, but we have a very active community that's engaged in that. And that's really, I think, a strategy for us that's been working for 20 years of really getting our communities engaged in solutions, because we had a previous history of litigation and fighting, and now we found with the collaboration model, we're actually making a lot more headway, and I think this is just going to be one of our big challenges going forward.
Okay. We got time for one more question, and I see one or two over there. Whoever gets the mic first.
I kind of have a two-part question for Maria. So you showed a picture of some sort of infrastructure you've put in around some of the natural features, and I wonder if you were seeing impacts on some of those natural features that people are going to visit, other like in terms of, and what kind of steps you had to take to protect those. So you're looking at me like you don't understand my question. So with the increase in visitors, were you seeing negative impacts on the natural environment that they were going to see? And the second question I had was, how did sort of the country adjust to this increased demand for transportation and rental cars that you know, when the growth was happening so fast, do you sort of see these lags and like people getting stranded in Reykjavik with like nothing to do because they couldn't actually get out of the city? Or did that sort of happen naturally and people were able to have those positive experiences when the numbers were growing so fast?
Okay, that was a big question. Yes, like I explained, we are seeing evidence of damage to nature at certain popular sites, yes. Your question about the infrastructure, I'm not quite sure if I caught that one. Sort of whether that is affecting the experience, the infrastructure itself, or?
You had to build quite a bit of infrastructure to accommodate visitors afterwards.
Yeah, we have had to build infrastructure to both protect nature and also just keep the travelers safe. I think because of the fast growth, we have been more sort of reactive than proactive, and had to work really, really quickly. Now we have, with the growth sort of slowing down, we have an opportunity to catch our breath a little bit, and we're actually embarking on programs to educate, improve the type of infrastructure, make sure the design is such that it fits in with the landscape. And I also think it's important now and in the future to not just build everywhere. We need to decide where do we want built up sites that to be able to receive a mass of people and direct us correctly around the site, and which sites do we want to keep untouched, because a lot of people have an image of Iceland and want to experience untouched nature, being alone in the landscape. Not sure if that answered your question. So yeah, I think we're progressing in that. We've been quite sort of reactive, but we are progressing on the sort of management issue. And then you asked about transport as well. It's not our experience that, tourists having trouble sort of getting out of the city at all. Not sure quite I understood your question. No, like I mentioned, we need to increase the capacity of our roads and service them better, especially in winter. We've been very successful in reducing seasonality in Iceland. Only a few years ago, 50% of tourists arrived during the summer months, June, July, and August. Now it's down to 35%. We have more tourists coming in winter, enjoying the northern lights and so on. But we need to have our roads ready and serviced for that.
Okay, I think we're running out of time. So thank you all very much. Thank both of you. I love both your destinations, and I look forward to going back. Off season.